What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Actually Good Coffee podcast, the show where we talk about all things coffee related, all while I drink a cup of coffee. My wife recently gave birth to our first child, so I apologize for the delay in this week's episode, but we are back. Today I want to talk about the wave of tariffs that has continued to drive up the price of coffee. Tough topic to talk about. More specifically, President Donald Trump's recent tariff threats on Colombia, Mexico, Canada, and China. And finally, my opinion on the situation at hand. If you love Colombian, Mexican, and in Canada's case, Swiss water decaf coffee, or rely on it for your business, this is something you'll want to pay attention to. Coffee prices are already at record highs, and these moves could make things even more expensive. Let's break down what's happening, why President Trump is threatening these tariffs, and how this could impact coffee drinkers, roasters, and the entire supply chain. First, let's talk about Colombia. We already know that Trump had threatened tariffs on Colombian imports like coffee, crude oil, and flowers, using economic pressure over Colombia's immigration policies. Not only is Colombia the third largest exporter of coffee in the world, but the United States is also their biggest recipient. The Colombian president, Gustavo Petro, was very public in his headstrong retaliation, but reached an agreement with President Trump after about an afternoon of back and forth. Now, in a more confirmed move, Trump has officially placed a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports. Unlike previous policies that granted exemption for allies, Canada and Mexico are not exempt at this time. Initially, Canada and Mexico threatened to retaliate with their own tariffs on U.S. goods, including coffee. But just this week, both countries backed down after negotiations with the U.S. So no immediate trade war on coffee, but the uncertainty is not doing the C market any favors, coffee market. With Mexico and Canada avoiding retaliation, that's good news for coffee drinkers in the short term. No sudden price hikes on Mexican beans or Swiss water decaf beans. Just as a side note, Swiss water decaf coffee accounts for the majority of the decaf coffee beans in America. I believe it's about 50 to 60%. Not positive, so check me on that one. For coffee roasters like myself, these trade battles mean one thing: staying up to date. At first, Canada and Mexico planned to fight back with tariffs on U.S. goods, including coffee. That would have meant higher prices for Mexican coffee imports, so think Chiapas and Oaxacan beans, Canadian decaf processing, and U.S. roasted coffee exports to Canada, which is a big market for specialty coffee roasters. But again, after last-minute negotiations, both countries backed down. Why did this happen? On Monday, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum agreed to send 10,000 troops to the border, and in return, Trump said he would work to limit the influx of American guns into the country. In Canada's case, they stated that they are willing to strengthen the border by spending $1.3 billion on border security and create a task force to combat organized crime. For coffee lovers, no immediate price hikes on Mexican or Canadian coffee-related products. The specialty coffee industry is all about relationship-based sourcing. Roasters work directly with farmers to ensure quality, sustainability, and fair pay. But when tariffs disrupt trade, that model starts to break down. If trade uncertainty persists, importers will hesitate to buy large volumes of coffee and instead turn to spot buying, causing a supply chain slowdown. Spot buying is basically like buying coffees when they are readily available rather than contracting a specific amount for an extended period of time. So it is less reliable. So while the Canada-Mexico situation has cooled off, there's still some instability in the coffee market. Right now, here's what we know. The steel and aluminum tariffs are happening. This could have an indirect impact on the coffee industry. Canada and Mexico backed off from their coffee-related tariffs, so no immediate price hikes for Mexican beans or Canadian decaf. However, Trump has only put in place a 30-day pause, which at this point is probably closer to 20, so this is only temporary. So what can you do? Well, you can continue to support small roasters and coffee shops who prioritize ethical sourcing and transparency. You can stock up on your favorite Colombian or Mexican coffee beans before anything changes, and you can also stay informed by listening to this podcast, because trade policies shift fast, and coffee drinkers need to be ahead of the curve. Right now, coffee prices are already historically high due to dry weather, supply chain disruptions, and inflation. So this extra layer of trade wars and tariffs could make things things even more unpredictable. And even without direct coffee tariffs, Trump's steel and aluminum policies still affect coffee indirectly because roasters need steel equipment. Coffee is also packaged in aluminum-lined bags for the most part, and even espresso machines rely on imported steel. So while coffee itself isn't being taxed, everything around it is getting more expensive. And this is ultimately why specialty coffee is at a crossroads. We're fighting climate issues, supply problems, and now political decisions that could change how we source and drink coffee for the foreseeable future. So in summary, coffee is the little brother caught in a dispute between mom and older brother on whether the older brother should bring younger brother out with his friends and pay for his meal. Canada, Colombia, and Mexico's decision to back down is good news, but only temporarily. For now, the best thing you can do is stay informed and support small businesses who are trying to navigate these unpredictable shifts. Part of the reason this episode took me so long was because so many new articles were coming out on a daily basis about these tariffs. So I kept having to constantly update this script, and lately I'm finding more and more people seem to incorporate the tariff news into their daily talking points and are very emotionally driven in their opinions. Funny enough, most of the people who are so caught up in this news aren't even involved in the coffee industry. That's a joke. But the C market is getting hit the hardest in part due to what is going on, so I feel like I have some ground to stand on with what I'm about to say. The more that I've worked on this episode, the more that I'm realizing that none of this matters. There's nothing that you can do about it. Unless you are Bill Murray, the president and CEO of the National Coffee Association, who has multiple lawyers in constant dialogue with members of U.S. Congress trying to stress the importance of the coffee market, there's nothing that you can do to change what's going on. Most of what you're seeing doesn't even grasp the entirety of the situation. Just for example, I recently got off the phone with our Colombian importer, and he was talking about how upset he was with their president's response to the tariff situation, especially since his main talking point for getting elected was how much he cared for his people. If you've been paying attention to Colombian politics at all, you would know that their current president has a history of making some shady moves in the past, and his cabinet is currently falling apart. 4 members recently just resigned. Canada too. You cannot separate the fact that they're about to have an election and how that will not affect their decision making on the response regardless of what they stand for. This is politics, and I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, so why would I waste my time trying if my actions are not going to have an effect regardless? You're not going to win this game, no matter how hard you argue. But you know what you can do? You can stay loyal to your favorite coffee brand. You can take action in your job so you can make more money, or even find a new one that pays better so you can one day start your own organization that supports your views, or donate to one that already does. Or you can just continue to be miserable and complain on social media about how expensive and terrible everything is. There are much more pressing issues in your own personal life that you probably don't even want to admit, but will have a far greater impact on your well-being. So figure out what you can actually do that will have an immediate impact on your situation, whether it's your job, your relationship, your daily life, anything that will at least take one step towards making progress. I'm speaking from experience on this one, so you can believe me when I say I promise you will be much happier if you can just focus on a smaller circle of issues. And if you can figure those things out, then maybe one day you'll be in a better position to start taking action steps in helping those in a much broader circle. As always, thank you guys for listening to the Actually Good Coffee podcast. I know this episode was a little bit more personal, but I feel like I've been seeing this a lot recently, so I wanted to address it. I really do appreciate it, and I will talk to you all again very soon.